All right, I haven't made a coding video in a week, and honestly, just haven't been feeling it. But I did scroll through my YouTube feed, and I saw that the Primogen made a video talking about this programming language, this REPL called Strudel, which allows you to basically code music directly in your browser. And I think this is a great way to kind of get people introduced to coding if they like music. You can start teaching them how functions work and how you can actually call various things to change how music can be made. All right, so let me give you an example of something I've been kind of working on, and then I'm going to walk you through a lot of the stuff that I've learned with Strudel. You can code directly inside the browser here, which is pretty convenient. It's all in JavaScript. Let's paste in this code, and I'm going to go ahead and just run it. Okay, so as you can tell, let me stop this. When it's playing through, you can see the keys kind of get highlighted, which is a nice visualization. And there's also other ways you can have visualizations kind of going when this is playing. So personally, I thought this was very cool. I used to play around with free loops in Ableton a long time ago, and just being able to write all this in code is actually pretty cool. And then on top of that, I do have some stuff set up locally where I can actually use Cursor and AI, and I can chat with, different models to introduce chord progressions and try to change various things. I'm trying to push the boundaries of how good LLMs are with music theory and this type of stuff. So far, it's not too good. But it is kind of convenient to have the tab completions and cursor. But in this video, I'm just going to show you the basics of Strudel, and maybe we can make a really quick trance song or something like that. Now, the way Strudel works is that it has like a cycle. So every second, it's going to play a cycle, and you can change how fast that is playing by setting the cycles per second up here. So this is a little formula you can use to basically get the beats per minute. The 128 is typically what you use for trance. If you're doing like drum and bass, you probably want like 176 or something. So one thing you do in Strudel is you can do like this money sign colon. You can actually like label these with whatever you want. But it's just a way to like have these sounds start playing. So the first thing we should probably do is create a kick drum. I'm still trying to learn Strudel. There's a bunch of different ways you can create notes. But one of the simplest ways you can do a kick drum is just say sound, and then you can say bass drum. And I'm going to go ahead and just press play. Okay, so there's the bass drum. But we want a 4 on the floor, right? We want 4 of these to fire off at the same time. So I'm going to do an exclamation mark and do a 4, and I'll click play. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Another way, if you want, you can actually just type out these BDs all by hand, and I can play that as well. Now notice that when I put more BDs, it's actually going to play these a lot faster, because again, it's trying to squeeze all these into one cycle. So if I play it, pretty fast. And if I add a couple more, it's even faster. So you can actually slow down this thing. If you want like, 1/8 beat every single time, and you want to slow it down, you can actually do a dot slow, or you can say dot fast if you want. I'm going to keep it as slow, and I'll press play. Okay, now another approach that you can do is you can actually do these little carrots. And so this is going to say basically every cycle play one bass drum. So now if I play it, notice that it's going to play this one, and it's going to wait for a cycle to go by, and it's going to play the next one. And let me get rid of the slow before I kick this off so you guys can see. So again, whatever this rate is for your cycles, it's going to play one bass drum every single time. So what I've been doing is typically I'll do brackets here so I can kind of visualize your measures. And so this will be one full cycle. I'm going to do doon, 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 and this is your other cycle. And it basically just keeps repeating. All right. And of course, you could just do like a ×4. I think this is another approach you can do. There's also something called a struct. There's a bunch of different ways you can basically do the same thing, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around like what's the best approach. But we're going to keep on trying to layer on some additional sounds to this. So we're going to stick with the bass drum, the 4 on the floor bass drum. So let's just simplify this like we had earlier. All right, so let's try to layer on this. So I'm going to make another sound, and I'm going to say a snare drum, and I'm actually going to type these out. All right, but we actually want to put rest. So I'm going to do rest, snare, rest, snare. And again, you can actually just put this whole thing in a bracket, and you can do 2. If you see a repetitive element, you can do stuff like that. You can actually combine this You want to keep them all in the same thing. You actually put a comma here. And that's going to basically play this one concurrently with this one. Like I said, there's a bunch of different ways you can achieve the same thing. It's just a matter of like trying to get the beat in what approach, what convention is going to make you get that the fastest. All right, so let's try to also create a hi-hat. So I'm just going to do a sound, and I'll do hi-hat times, I'll do 8. Okay, sounds pretty good. And again, I'll probably actually reduce this to a 2 here so that I can actually just change this easily. And then this I could also change. So let's try to add in like a pad, right? So this is just like a, you know, like a keyboard that you play and you hold just for some nice background music to kind of fill in. So I'm going to say note. This is another keyword you can use, another function. And it's very similar to this. You can pass it in a pattern, but this time we're actually going to give it some notes. So I'm going to say A4. Okay. And then the same idea. You can actually like build out a song by just saying different stuff. So I'll say C4, D4, E4. I might even make that a slow of a 4. So once you have some notes defined, you can actually change the sound of them. So like you can do stuff like piano. You can change it to a saw wave, sine wave, triangle. But actually, if you were to drop this thing out and go to sounds and then go to synths, you can actually search for like whatever you want here. So I could say lead or I could say pad. There's a couple built in. There's not too many, but it's enough to be able to like learn. So I actually could change this to halo. Okay, so far it's sounding a little bit better. So now let's try to actually make this a little bit more, you know, layered and have more depth to it. So we're going to let it play, and then I'm going to do a couple things to it. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is we can transpose it to move it down an octave. And then I'm also going to slap on a saw wave here. So you can actually do a comma here. You can actually play 2 patterns at the same time, or 2 sounds over the same set of notes. So the saw might be a little bit too intense, and I might not want to transpose that, but I'm trying to show you some of the cool things you can do. But instead of notes, we can actually do like chords. So if you know anything about music theory, you can say chord. And then in here, we can say like A minor, say C, we could say D, and then we could say E. And then we're going to say voicing, and I'm going to play this. Alright, so that chord progression sounds good, but honestly, sometimes I just go to AI and ask, like, what is some other good progressions? And you'll see this notation that like tells you the different structure of the chords. So 1, 6, 4, 5. I'm going to copy this and just kind of paste it in and see how this sounds. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. Now, one thing you can do with these chords is you can actually start chopping them up. So if you want to chop them into fourths, and then we can actually visualize this. I'll say piano roll. See how it's actually making the chords, but then chopping them up into 1/4 beat for each one. So we don't want them to hold for the whole part. So I'm going to say sustain, and then I'll say 0.1. Maybe a 2. You can actually add a decay. Add an attack. Okay, sounds a little bit better, but there's also a bunch of other things you could add to this. So for example, you can add a high pass filter or a low pass filter. So I'm going to say dot low pass filter, and then I'm going to add a number here. Okay, sounds pretty good, but you can play around with the numbers. Okay, but maybe you actually want to be able to like figure out a good value for this. I'm gonna say slider. I'll say 600 from 100 to 1000. And now inside of this UI, you can actually change. That sounds pretty good, but you can also add some other things, such as making it more coarse. You can add some crunch to it. You can add a low-pass envelope. Now what we can also do on the chop, we want to say almost never. We can add a random amount of additional things that it's going to add to the note. So okay, let's also do a low pass filter, and then I'm going to add the delay. And now this is something also that's really cool. You can actually do a sine wave. You can say range, and I want to say from 0.1 to 0.3, and I'll make this like a slow. So you can actually make it like change shape over time by attaching something like this. Here it's getting like staccato versus legato. Let's transpose this down. Now, you could probably spend hours trying to make this sound good, but at some point, like, you just have to accept that what you have is decent enough. Now, there's things you can actually attach to these bass drums. Like, if you wanted to have it more roomy, you could say room, and that's going to make it, like, echo a little bit. So, listen to this. Here it's, like, more echoey. Now, as you keep adding more instruments, you're going to start hearing more chopping and clipping of your sounds, because if you know anything about music theory, as you have all these different waves playing on top of each other, sometimes they're additive and sometimes they're subtractive. So one thing you can do is you can add a side chain. So when the kick drum is going, you can actually reduce the sound of this. So on this, we're going to say duck, and I'll say 2, and I'll say duck. You know, I don't remember how to do it, so we're going to go over here to reference, and I'll say duck. Duck attack, duck depth, and duck orbit. So honestly, you could just say duck orbit is a 2, duck attack is 0.2, and then duck depth will be 0.6. So now that we have that defined, we can actually go down to this instrument. I can say orbit 2. This is just like a unique identifier for what the side chain is going to be on. You hear that like in and out sound? Alright, so it's sounding a little bit better. You can keep on doing various things, like you could add filters to this, bandpass filters, high pass filters to try to make your drums sound good. But I think at this point, I mean, like, we have a nice chord. Maybe we can try to add in like a bass. So we're going to go ahead and probably grab a lot of this stuff. And then we're going to just paste it down here. And instead of chord, I'm going to say note. And then for the bass, this is going to be like our bass drum. We can actually name it if you want to. You could say this will be bass. This could be our pad. This could be our kick. This could be our snare, and this will be our hi-hat. And then we want to actually change these to be like A, C, F, G. And get rid of voice and get rid of the chop. And then we're going to say sine and then just saw. And then hopefully we can find a way to like make this sound pretty good. Sometimes like if you want to figure out a good sound, I would just comment this out. And then we can just start fresh with like less. Okay, so overall that's still too high. I forgot to put my numbers on here, so I'm going to add 4s to all these. Let's play this. It's a little soft, so I'm going to add a gain of 1.7 or like 1.5. Maybe I'll make this a square and a triangle. Now one thing that's actually cool to add in is you can actually change the layers of this. So right now I'm just saying, do a square and do a triangle. But if you want, you can actually do different layers here. I can say we're going to do a square on this layer, and then we're going to do a triangle on this layer. And then we can actually start changing stuff on this. So I can say I want to make the gain on the square be 7, and the gain on the triangle be 5. Okay. Now one thing you can add on is frequency modulation. So like if you do a dot, a 1 here, you could do like a 2 here for the frequency modulation. And that'll kind of like, if you look at a scope here, we can actually visualize the wave. And we're gonna add some post gain here, maybe a 2. Give it some more volume. Post gain is everything after the effects. Maybe even a 3. And we can come back and add this one in. Okay, so we're making some progress. Now, I think the last instrument I'll add in here is like an ARP. If we want to do these curly braces, and we can simply say sound is going to be a sine wave for right now. Make sure you use double quotes, by the way. Don't use single quotes. It like messes stuff up. But here you can actually define certain notes. Like I'm going to grab the same notes here. And you can actually do a percentage sign. And I'll say like 16. And if I play this, it's going to be very fast. Let me just comment some of the stuff out. Okay. So that sounds pretty good, but what we could also do is we could actually copy this and paste it over here. So you can actually make this go up, like slowly step up. And then make sure you put these in the brackets. So if you change this to like a 32, it's going to go a lot faster. And then probably change this to a triangle. You could add some longer sustain to this. And probably more decay. Probably some room to it. Let's just play this one out. Now one thing that's cool to add into this stuff is a delay. So you can actually do like a delay here, and it's going to kind of make it sound like it's echoing. Maybe a 3. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I might want to make it a little bit more, add a saw here. We can also make it vibrate, so let's just do like a 10. Add everything in. Okay, maybe get rid of that. think for this one also, like a sine wave here with a range of 200 to 500 would probably be pretty good. I'll do a slow of 8 on that one, or 4. So I think this ARP sounds okay. I mean, I probably spent a lot more time trying to like improve it. I'm not happy with it, but we do need like a lead. So I'm gonna go ahead and just like make a lead here. And again, we need to discover or try to figure out a good set of notes that we could play onto the song. I might actually get rid of this. I might tone this down a little bit. It's a little loud. But on the lead, we're gonna say square, and then we want to find some notes that could play well with this key, right? So we're gonna go ahead and put some brackets here. And then we want to put 4 of these square brackets. And then I'm going to go ahead and just put an A4, or maybe the A5, and I'm going to hold it for 4 beats. So this @ symbol is how you can hold a note. And then I'm going to try to just kind of work off of this chord progression that we have. I'll do this. So this is the A, and then we're going to do like a C. Maybe this can be like a 3. Now, sometimes it's hard to visualize this without an actual like piano in front of you, but I'm going to go ahead and just like follow the progression. And then we're going to do like a fall down. So every time we have this note, we're going to go down. This will be a 3 and then goes to a 4. I'm just going to put some notes in here and see if we can like just get this to sound decent. So we have a C. We're going to try to do a G4 to drop down to the F. We'll do 3 here, and this could be a 3. And then again, we'll go down to like an A4 or something. I don't know. Okay, so we could probably play this. I do want to try to do a couple more things here. I'm going to say orbit 2, and then I want to also just do like a low pass filter. I might just add like a sol, I might add a sine, and then we'll do like a gain to see what this is going to be. Oh, this seems to be a 3, that's why it sounds weird. All right, and so there you have it. I mean, there's a ton more stuff. If you go to the Learn Guide, like there is a ton of other types of things you can do, which I haven't even scratched the surface of it, but just learning how to actually build out some patterns and some cool notes. But it's a very cool experience. I've been trying to teach my kids like how to like code using this, and I think if you want to introduce someone into STEM or like, you know, science, technology, engineering, this is probably a really great way to do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed and you learned something by watching this. There's like various other functions that I didn't even talk about. Like I think I have like a whole list here. As an example, like here are all the different functions that you can kind of tack onto patterns. Like you can see there's quite a lot. And I don't know if these is even like an exhaustive list, but at the very least, like if you do want to get serious about learning Strudel, like go through and learn like one new thing every day, and just slowly combine it and try to see how it changes the structure of your waves. One thing I didn't even mention, which I should probably mention, is that there's ways to visualize the frequency. Yeah, let's go to visual feedback, and then down here, they have various different ways to actually look at how this stuff is being like visualized. So scope is like looking at the actual like waveform, which can help you kind of visualize. There's the piano roll. I think it's also called the punch cards. It might be a little bit different. And then there's also one that I think is important, which is it the pitch wheel? Spectrum, I think that's the one. So like if you want to actually see where stuff is happening on the spectrum, you can do this, and then let's just go ahead and run this real quick. So here is the spectrum graph where basically, you know, from the very bottom, I think is like your lower frequencies. So like if I were to put a spectrum graph on the bass drum, let's just put it here and run it. Notice that, or maybe I have it backwards, but one of these is like a really low frequency, and then down at the bottom is like your really high frequencies. But this can help you visualize like, okay, do I want to like do a high pass or low pass filter? Anyway, this is just a really quick overview of Strudel. I'm having a lot of fun playing around with it. Like I'm actually enjoying coding a little bit now instead of like AI generating everything for me. So yeah, check it out. If you guys like music, you like dance music or electronic music, like go check this out, play around with it. It's much easier to hit the ground running with than using something like Fruity Loops or Ableton. And it's quite powerful. I mean, like once you start learning this, like you can actually build some pretty crazy songs. And I've actually joined the Discord community, and listen to some of the examples that people are making, and like it can get pretty crazy. All right, hope you guys enjoyed watching. Have a good day and happy coding.